Ms. Wilson, you're in the middle of a paternity triangle, caught between two men you slept with, cousins who grew up as brothers, two men who believe they fathered your 10-month-old son.
The courtroom was electric with tension as Ms. Wilson took her place, her face filled with shame and exhaustion. She was in the eye of a storm, one she had helped create. Two men stood on either side of her, first cousins raised like brothers, now rivals in the most intimate of disputes. The child in question, 10-month-old Arrow, had no idea that his very identity was about to be put on trial. Both men claimed fatherhood, and both had families already calling the baby their own, but only one could be right.
So, Ms. Wilson, I want to ask you, how do we end up in a paternity dispute involving two cousins?
I messed up. I made a mistake. I'm here today to figure it out. I don't want the family feud going on anymore.
Mr. Eddie, the cousin who crossed a line. His admission was as painful as it was shameless. He had slept with Ms. Wilson not once, but twice on the night of a family get-together. Outside, away from the others, under the influence of alcohol and temptation, their lapse in judgment had taken place on a hay bale in the yard while Mr. Nicholas slept inside. What followed was even more damaging. They kept the secret.
So you had sex on this hay bale?
Yes, Your Honor.
Outside of the house where your cousin was in there sleeping after work?
Yes, Your Honor.
Then there was Mr. Nicola, the quieter of the two men, who had been Arrow's father in every way that mattered, up to this point. He remembered the joy on Ms. Wilson's face the day she announced the pregnancy. He'd come home from work to what he thought was a surprise dinner. Instead, she handed him a pregnancy test, but the warmth he felt then had long since chilled.
When did you find out Ms. Wilson was pregnant?
The same day, I came home from work with my son, and she told him to tell me that there was a pie in the oven, and I asked her what kind.
Ms. Wilson didn't pretend to be innocent. She admitted she had made a mistake that caused pain, but she also insisted the timeline of events left room for doubt. According to her, she had been with Mr. Nicola on October 4th or 5th, and then with Mr. Eddie on October 7th. Still, the gap between the two encounters was close enough to leave both men within the window of possibility, and that was why they were all here.
That's why we're here today. I messed up. I made a big mistake, and I really ruined a family. And I'm gonna be the first to call myself out because it wasn't right, and I just want to figure it out.
The court also heard from the women who raised these two men, identical twins whose bond was now in trouble. Each mother had submitted a statement. Mr. Nicola's mother wrote about how deeply she loved Arrow. Mr. Eddie's mother, however, recalled being the first one told about the pregnancy test. According to her, Ms. Wilson had admitted right then that it had to be Nathan's baby.
Your mother submitted a statement to the court. She's one of the identical twins. And Miss McCartney sent this statement. Cordell's the dad.
But Ms. Wilson pushed back. She insisted she had never refused a DNA test and had always wanted answers. In her version, it was Mr. Eddie's mother who failed to follow through with setting a date. The he said, she said back and forth only deepened the cracks in an already fragile family dynamic. And watching from the bench, Judge Lake was determined to get to the truth.
He's the dad.
Your Honor, I did not refuse to go get a DNA test. I wanted to from the beginning. I told her anytime she said that she would give me a date. She never gave me a date, so that's why I personally came here.
Even the extended family got pulled into the fray. Ms. Endicott, the aunt to both men, testified that Ms. Wilson frequently told Nathan he was the father. She claimed Ms. Wilson had refused not one, but two opportunities to take a paternity test in private. This raised an important question. Was Ms. Wilson clinging to the hope that Mr. Nicola was the father because she loved him, or because it was more convenient for her future?
He was there at the birth, and I felt like Nathan wasn't even ready if it was his own son because he didn't have a job, he didn't have a vehicle, he still lived with his parents, his aunt.
The emotional weight of the situation bore down hardest on Mr. Nicola. His voice broke as he spoke about Arrow, the child he had loved without question. He didn't just want to be the father, he already was in the day-to-day reality of parenting. He wasn't here to fight for a title. He was fighting to hold onto a bond he believed was already written in blood, but belief alone wouldn't be enough to settle the facts.
This is just eating you up, isn't it, Mr. Eddie?
Yep.
I can just see, honey. Mr. Nicola, you can't really even look at your cousin right now?
No, Your Honor.
You can't.
No, Your Honor.
What do you feel? Why can't you look?
The conception date the doctor had given matched the night Ms. Wilson was with Mr. Eddy. Yet biology wasn't the only thing on trial here. Love, betrayal, loyalty, and family had all been dragged into the courtroom. After Eddy apologized to his cousin, the judge opened the envelope that would either unite or divide this family permanently.
Pertaining to whether Mr. Nicola or Mr. Eddy is the father of 10-month-old Arrow Nicola. The biological father is Mr. Nicola. Mr. Pitchford Kendricks, you opened your case to prove that you are the biological father of the defendant's 2-month-old son, Javier. You claim she is denying paternity only because she wants to be with another man and needs him to be the father. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Gregory Pitchford Kendricks walked into that courtroom clutching a baby basket like it was his last chance at redemption. So now, here he was, staring down the woman who'd once confided in him, shared her bed with him, and now, he claimed, was trying to shut him out of his son's life. And for what? Because she wanted another man to play daddy?
Well, Your Honor, I grew up in the streets of Detroit, no dad in my life, and I just want to make sure that my son doesn't have to grow up like I did. And
That's a beautiful basket there. You brought that for your son once you prove your case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Alicia Saavedra wasn't denying her complicated history. She admitted to threesomes, she admitted to inviting 2 men into her life, and her bedroom. But she stood firm in her belief. Javier wasn't Gregory's child. According to her, she'd already moved on with her boyfriend Maurice, and Gregory was nothing more than a messy piece of the past.
It started like this. Me and Greg met each other through he was dating a roommate of mine. And he came over one day. We did end up hitting it off and we was cool. Ended up having sex.
But let's pause here for a second because underneath all this courtroom drama is a deeper lesson about relationships. Situations like Gregory and Alicia's don't just erupt overnight. They build up over months, even years of unresolved conflicts, broken trust, and poor communication. If you're experiencing similar challenges in your relationship, arguments, mistrust, or just plain confusion, I strongly recommend Mend the Marriage by Brad Browning. Unlike other relationship resources, this program isn't just advice, it's a lifeline. Brad provides practical, proven methods to stop conflicts in their tracks, restore lost trust, and reignite emotional intimacy between partners. Your relationship doesn't have to end up in court or in emotional chaos. Scan the QR code right now or click the link in the description. Your relationship deserves this chance to heal and thrive. But Gregory painted a very different picture. Their connection hadn't started romantically. He was actually dating Alicia's roommate first. Somehow, that tangle of relationships turned into friendship and then a request. Alicia wanted to meet someone new. Gregory introduced her to his half-cousin, Maurice. That introduction should have been the end of it, but it was just the beginning.
And we became friends. You know, I was still kind of talking to her friend. You know what I'm saying? So,
oh, you still with the friend?
yeah.
Right.
After that, you know, I hooked her up. She asked me, did I know anybody else? You know what I'm saying? That she could hook up with.
So who did you hook her up with?
Well, a half-cousin of mine.
Yeah, it was that wild. However, the arrangement wasn't a one-time thing. According to Gregory, their threesomes happened on and off for a decade. But it wasn't just group encounters. Gregory claimed that when things got especially bad between Alicia and Maurice, she'd call him crying. And more than once, he said, he was there to comfort her.
And all that, she called me crying and stuff. You know, I had to go over there and kind of help her cheer up and stuff, you know.
So you're saying you did the threesomes, but then you also would go over and sleep with her by yourself?
Gregory made it clear that during their threesomes, he always used protection out of respect for Maurice. But that night, it was different. That night, there was no condom. It was raw, impulsive, and interrupted. Alicia admitted it too. She even messaged Maurice during it, warning him of what she was about to do. 15 minutes later, Maurice was on his way back.
Threesomes, I was trying to respect him, you know what I'm saying? So, and wear a condom, but I kind of liked her, you know, from the first time I had seen her and stuff, so.
But,
wait, so what are you saying? So when you had the threesomes with your cousin and her, you would wear a condom?
Yeah, for respect for him.
Because that's respect.
Yeah.
Flabbergasted? Yes, Judge, me too. Still, Alicia didn't believe that was the night the baby was conceived. She insisted the conception happened in May. Gregory said it was April. Alicia claimed they weren't even seeing each other then. She was certain, unshakable, that Maurice was the father. Yet the dates didn't lie.
You do?
I do.
And how do you know that, Miss Saavedra?
Because me and Gregory wasn't messing around in May. I conceived in May.
It was April.
Right, and I conceived in May.
Alicia's defense rested heavily on timing. She was adamant that she hadn't been with Gregory during her conception window. But to Gregory and his basket of baby items, being a father wasn't just about biology. It was about breaking a generational curse. He wasn't here to dodge responsibility. He was fighting for it, and he immediately went for the birth certificate.
Why is nobody on the birth certificate then?
Because Maurice has another
And
girlfriend at the time, and he wasn't up at the
Why does
hospital.
Mariah have his last name and...
Because he's my only son, and I wanted him with my last name.
There was another twist. This wasn't the first child caught in the middle of this triangle. Alicia had an older child who also conceived during the time of the threesomes. She claimed that the child was Morris's too, but Gregory seemed to think otherwise. The sexual encounters, the confusion, the shifting alliances, it was a mess. The judge sifted through the details, trying to make sense of the chaos.
Now, what are you really feeling inside?
I wanted everything from Mariah. I wanted her to grow up with mother, wanted her to grow up with father. So, with that being said, I was willing to give Maurice whatever he wanted.
By now, the courtroom was dead silent, hanging on every word. The layers of intimacy, betrayal, and desperation were unveiled like a drama nobody could turn away from. Gregory stood assured, the baby basket resting beside him. Alicia stood her ground, but even she seemed braced for impact. All the emotion, the accusations, the confessions, they had led to this single moment.
Mr. Kendricks, you are not the father. Mr. Connor, you say a one-time fling with the defendant turned into more than 15 years of child support payments and even jail time for a child you have never believed is yours. You need today's results to prove you are not her child's father.
The tension hit hard the moment Mr. Connor stepped forward. His eyes were sharp with years of bitterness. A single fling, he claimed, had turned into 15 years of back payments and time behind bars. He said he had never believed the child was his, but the system didn't care about his beliefs. It cared about the paperwork. And for Connor, that paperwork had cost him everything. Ms. Wallace, calm but defiant.
Financially especially. It's times when I can't afford things. I've even been to jail. 2005, November the 5th until January 2006.
For failure to pay
For
child
failure
support.
to pay child support. That is correct, Your Honor.
Fired back. This wasn't some misunderstanding, she insisted. Connor had been there. He knew about the pregnancy. He knew about the child. He had been part of their lives, and now he was trying to escape responsibility. Behind her, her adult son Jeffrey sat quietly, torn between two stories that couldn't
Your Honor,
both
he
be
just
true.
wants off-child support. For one, it was more than just a one-night fling.
You know Jeffrey isn't my child, and I have you on Facebook.
You can quit pointing your fingers because I'm an adult.
Connor's voice broke when he described what the child support had done to him. A complete upturning of his life. He swore that Wallace knew from the beginning that the child wasn't his, that she had let him take the fall. He stood in court not just for a DNA result, but to tear down a lie he believed had ruined him. He claimed he didn't even know she was pregnant until someone else told him, long after the fact.
Mr. Connor, you say the relationship with Ms. Wallace was a one-night stand.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that? Do you remember this relationship encounter?
There wasn't a relationship. I met her through a family member. We all used to hang out a little bit, here or there in the fall.
Wallace shot back, saying he was never a victim. Things got uglier when Ms. Wallace painted a very different picture of a full-blown year-long relationship with repeated intimacy, conversations, and shared moments. Connor, on the other hand, swore that they had one encounter, one moment of brief penetration before she changed her mind. No relationship, no follow-up,
And you said,
nothing.
fine, because no is no.
Yeah.
And you never completed the act?
No.
And it never lasted more than one night? You never had sex again?
No.
That's not true either.
What do you remember, Ms. Wallace?
I remember him and I being in a whole year relationship, and we had sex numerous of times.
Wallace was confident in her timeline. She said pagers were how they communicated back then. She swore she called and told him. Connor called her a liar. When asked why Wallace might have pinned the child on him, he gave a simple answer. He was doing well back then. A BMW, a little money. Maybe she thought he was an easy target. That one encounter, he said, had cost him everything. Connor said he never wanted anything from her.
Wallace is saying you all were intimate for a year, and when she found out she was pregnant, she called you.
At all, Your Honor.
Do you remember? Do you remember being told she was pregnant?
Only by the friend, and I blew that off.
And had no desire to be involved because he knew the child wasn't his. Still, both agreed on a key detail. Wallace brought Jeffrey to see him when he was just a few months old. But after that visit, the next time he saw Jeffrey was at his mother's funeral when the boy was 5. The years in between were a blur of miscommunication, tension, and legal back and forth.
I told him I did not want to be in a relationship with him, you know.
You're a professional liar.
And you know what, I'm not going to even, disrespect you because I'm a woman.
What stuck out most was the unresolved anger. Wallace broke down in court, talking about raising 3 kids alone, watching her son go to school with holes in his shoes. Connor refused to take any blame. He said the child wasn't his, and those struggles weren't his to carry. Wallace accused him of manipulating the situation to avoid payments. He accused her of trapping him. Both were convinced the other was lying.
That you truly believe you are not his biological father.
I know.
Can you tell me, when was the first time you heard about, met Mr. Connor?
The first time that I met Jewett here, that I recall meeting, I was like,
The judge also noted something unusual. If Connor truly believed Jeffrey wasn't his son, why had he shown up again at all? Why keep pushing if he'd moved on? Connor said he wanted to clear his name. Wallace insisted he was trying to erase 15 years of support he legally owed. Meanwhile, Connor's wife was called to say what she knew about the whole situation.
I'd like to know what you know about this situation.
When Jeffrey was 10, we came home one day to the house, and he was sitting on the couch, and I just asked Jewett, who is that? And he said, that's Jeffrey, and I already knew the situation. He had already told me.
As Judge Lake prepared to read the DNA results, you could feel every eye locked on that envelope. Years of confusion, rage, and doubt now came down to a single piece of paper. Wallace crossed her arms, trying to appear calm. Connor looked like he was bracing for impact. Jeffrey leaned slightly forward in his chair, barely breathing. The room was silent.
It has been determined by this court. Mr. Connor, you are not the father.
I already knew it.
Ms. Ware, you claim that after one night of passion with the defendant, you ended up pregnant, but he is now denying paternity of your 3-year-old son, Ayante. You opened your case to prove he is the father because you are tired of raising your son alone. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
From the moment Ms. Weir walked in, there was a quiet storm brewing behind her tired eyes. She looked like a woman who had spent 3 years carrying the weight of uncertainty. Her son, Ayanta, was growing up without a father, and today she was here to put an end to that. But standing across from her was Mr. Wilson, a man she once called her gay best friend, and now the man she believed was her child's father.
Probably like 8 years ago, just, passing through the city. I was going to hair school at the time, and, I would see him on my way to hair school. We would hang out with each other, potluck. He cooked something, I cooked something, bring it over to his house, or he'd come over to my house.
They weren't strangers thrown together by chance. They had history. She knew he was gay. That was never in question. Not then. But somewhere along the way, friendship blurred. Ms. Weir admitted she always had a crush. He was handsome, charming, and real. She waited, watched, and one night, she decided she wasn't going to wonder anymore.
Take me to the night where things shifted. Obviously, if you're here in paternity court, your friendship turned.
Yeah.
So, Miss Ware, fill me in.
I had called him over. I was bored. I was home alone,
That night, she called him over like usual. Drinks, Netflix, good company. But this time, she wasn't looking for friendship. She was looking for something more. She made her move, and he didn't stop her. That was all the permission she needed. To her, it was a moment of connection. To him, it was a lapse in judgment. He insisted she got him drunk, that the encounter was fueled by alcohol and poor decisions.
I did. I'm confident about myself. He might think he's gay or whatever. That's why I'm thinking to myself, he think he's gay. But he ain't met me.
Now, 3 years later, she had a son. a beautiful, bright-eyed boy who needed to know who his father was. Mr. Wilson wasn't convinced. He said she'd tested other men, many of them, and now she was just down to him by default. He wasn't the father. He was sure of it, but the judge wasn't so quick to accept that. This wasn't a case of one fling and one accusation. This was layered, complicated,
So, Miss
and messy.
Ware, you had your plan all mapped out.
Yes, ma'am.
You ain't no shame in your game, huh?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you had decided this was gonna be my man.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotta be him. She just admitted that there are other men. But that wasn't all. She had been seeing other men around the time Ayanta was conceived. 3 other men, to be exact. Some used protection, others didn't. Why was Mr. Wilson the only one left? One by one, Ms. Weir recounted each failed attempt to confirm
Mr. Wilson
paternity.
says you were dating other guys. Were you dating other men at that time?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Were you sexually active with the other men?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Were you using protection with those men?
Some I was.
Some?
Wow.
How many other men?
A lot of them, Your Honor. She done.
The second man, a restaurant manager who noticed her frequent complaints, decided to charm his way into her life. She laughed as she recalled how he asked for her number to ensure her food would always be fresh, but he, too, was eliminated after a paternity test. The third man faded into the background without much detail, but it didn't matter. He wasn't the father either. Now, all signs pointed to
You
Mr.
have
Wilson.
previously taken paternity tests, DNA tests.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so let me go to man number 2.
Okay.
What was your relationship with him?
I had met him inside of a restaurant. He was actually the manager.
Mr. Wilson wasn't buying it. He held firm to his defense. He used protection. He remembered putting on the condom. She was lying. He said she had too many partners at the time to be sure about anything. He wasn't denying the encounter happened, just the idea that it could have resulted in a child. He called Ayanta his godson, but made it painfully clear. He didn't believe he was the biological
Mr. Wilson,
father.
we've now had accounts of 2 different men she was dating at the time.
Yes, Your Honor.
And they've both not been the father after DNA testing. Both of them. What do you think? I mean, you're saying you can't be the father, but she's had the DNA test with the 2 other men.
Yes, Your Honor.
The judge leaned in. The timeline didn't quite add up. If Ms. Weir had been intimate with multiple partners during that window, how could she be so sure about Mr. Wilson? And if she wasn't, then wasn't this whole courtroom visit premature? But Ms. Weir stood firm. She wasn't guessing. She was certain. And there was another layer, genetics. Mr. Wilson didn't see any
You're sleeping
resemblance.
with all of these men unprotected. Do you feel like, Mr. Wilson, you know for certain that there were more men besides the 3?
Yes, Your Honor, because like I said, we've been
Your Honor,
friends for a
there was
long
only
time.
4. There was
No,
only
Your Honor.
4.
It was more than that, Your Honor.
Still, the judge wasn't making any decisions based on feelings or facial features. This case had gone beyond stories and speculation. 3 years of doubt, 3 years of a boy growing up with no father figure. It all came down to science, a simple test, 1 envelope. She called for the results. The courtroom fell silent. Even the audience leaned forward, breaths held tight. No
Mr.
one
Wilson,
blinked.
you are not the father.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Jackson, you say Mr. Figures was a smooth-talking Casanova who swept you off your feet and out of your clothes and then left you with a baby.
Yes, Your Honor.
It started with a name, Mr. Figures, and a memory Miss Jackson never could shake. In the early 2000s, young and desperate for a fresh start, she joined the Job Corps to try and rebuild her life after giving up her first child. That's where she met him. Long, curly black hair. 20 years later, she was standing in the court, certain that he was the father of her son, Daniel, and determined
My family
to prove
actually told me, go, better yourself. Go to Job Corps, do what you need to do. And I looked for love in all the wrong places. I met him like on maybe a Friday or Saturday night. And when I saw him,
Mr. Figures didn't deny the romance. He owned up to being a ladies' man back then. According to him, they had their moments, wild, unfiltered, and unprotected. But when asked about fathering a child, he pushed back hard. He claimed Miss Jackson wasn't exclusive. There was another man, maybe more. And one night, he said, while they were in the middle of sex, she called out the other man's name.
Things that was called a green grass, right? We could go out and pick a spot and get to know each other, per se. So that's what we did one night. And at that time, when you're younger, sometimes people change their names and have these, call yourself little nicknames or whatever, right?
Back then, Miss Jackson thought she had a stomach virus. That's what she told the infirmary nurse. But the test came back positive. She was pregnant, alone, without her family's support, and scared. The moment she found out, she said she didn't know who to tell. Eventually, word spread, and suddenly, everyone had something to say, including Mr. Figures.
I thought I had a stomach virus or something. So when I went to the infirmary, you know what I'm saying, they gave me a pregnancy test. I'm stunned. I'm actually in shock. I don't have my family.
In court, the accusations kept unfolding. Mr. Figures insisted Miss Jackson was juggling more than just emotions. She had someone dealing with her, someone who had her back. Miss Jackson shot that down. Support didn't mean sex. And besides, she argued, if that other man truly believed the child was his, wouldn't he have stepped in by now? 20 years had passed. Daniil was no longer a child.
How do I know that it's not his or it's mine, or I don't know. It's like she just putting on
Your
somebody.
Honor,
I don't know what's going on.
This man, till this day, is still
in my life,
in the picture.
For Mr. Figures, the question was still, why now? Why had it taken 2 decades to get to this point? But Miss Jackson's frustration boiled over. It wasn't hesitation, it was the system. She said she'd been chasing this for years. She had his name, his information, and even his social security number. And yet, she claimed the state of Georgia hadn't moved. Not until now.
There's no way in God's green earth that anybody could ever think that this other man is his.
Come on.
I know.
Sound like he's running to me.
The only reason I'm here is because I want him to find out.
And then there was Daniil. Standing quietly for most of the hearing, he finally spoke. It had been him and his mother all his life. No father to toss a ball, no birthday cards, no weekend visits. Just the two of them weathering every storm. He stood beside her, not for revenge or validation, but for truth. The courtroom watched him closely. There was no bitterness in his voice, just a man raised on questions.
How has this affected you, young man?
We had hard times, rough times. We've been through thick and thin. And she always told me don't run from your problems, so I don't run from my problems. I stay with her through thick and thin.
Miss Jackson became emotional when asked what this meant for her. She described the ache of watching her other children get picked up by their fathers and whisked away to parks, parties, and places Daniil never went. He was always left behind, not because he wasn't loved, but because she was the only one fighting for him. And what would happen if something happened to her? She asked the court.
I have other children, and they dad come into their life. They come in, they take them places, they go here, they go there, you know what I'm saying? And it's always been me and him. He don't have nobody. I'm all he has, and he is all I have.
The judge's tone shifted, probing deeper, pressing both sides. Why had Mr. Figures been so resistant? Why hadn't he demanded a test years ago to clear his name? But Mr. Figures remained firm. He said he wasn't running. He showed up today, didn't he? If he didn't care, if he truly wanted to vanish, why face this courtroom, this moment? But Daniil was focused on standing up for his mother.
You're not sounding like a man right now. You're not sounding like a man right now. You're not sounding like a man right now. You're not sounding like a man.
Without a name?
Yes, you can buy anything with a name.
Okay, but look.
Hold on, Mr. Figures, are you suggesting that you did not know Miss Jackson's last name?
I did not.
And you didn't even know your own potential son's name?
I did not. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. Hey.
There were too many gray areas and too many years passed without certainty, but certainty was coming, whether he was ready or not. As emotions settled and the courtroom quieted, the judge reached for the envelope. 20 years of accusations, assumptions, and emotional wounds all boiled down here. A silence fell so deep it felt physical as the judge opened the results.
You are not the father. Mr. Fisher, you claim you made the biggest mistake of your life by signing the birth certificate for 2-month-old Sophia. Say your fiance dropped a bomb on you just 1 month ago and admitted you may not be her father. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
The courtroom was silent as Mr. Fisher stood stiffly, staring straight ahead, his hands tightly clasped in his lap. Everything in his life had unfolded within weeks. Just 2 months ago, he had proudly signed the birth certificate of a baby girl he believed was his own. Her name was Sophia. He'd fallen in love with her the moment he laid eyes on her tiny face. But now, everything has changed.
She kept the truth from me, and it kills me. I hope I am Sophia's father. I love her to death. That's my baby.
So you say you love her?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you tell me what you feel?
Sorrow,
pain, everything. It all hurts bad.
Ms. Doyle stood just feet away, her eyes downcast. She knew she'd made a terrible mistake, and not just because she had betrayed her fiancé. The timing of that betrayal haunted her. During a vacation, after hearing a lie from one of Mr. Fisher's family members claiming he had cheated on her, she'd let anger and heartbreak drive her into another man's arms. The encounter had been quick, unplanned, and unprotected.
I was on vacation with one of his family members in Florida, and another one of his family members that he was with at the time had texted me, and he said, "Trey's cheating on you," which we call him Trey, but his name is John.
Mr. Fisher had no idea then. He was thrilled when Ms. Doyle told him they were expecting. She'd taken 2 pregnancy tests that morning. He remembered the way she'd smiled. To him, the baby was a gift, a chance to start a family with the woman he adored. He hadn't suspected a thing, so when he slipped a ring into his pocket and proposed later that day, it was because he truly believed they had everything.
Knew nothing about this until after Sophia was born.
Yes, Your Honor.
I can see how much that hurt you.
A lot.
So can you take me to the day you found out Ms. Doyle was pregnant? Take me to that day.
That I found out she was pregnant. She had threw up like 3 or 4 times because she was feeling sick.
But Ms. Doyle had carried a secret. Even as she said yes and slipped the ring onto her finger, a voice inside her whispered that something wasn't right. She knew there was a chance Sophia wasn't his, but she couldn't bring herself to ruin the moment. He was so happy. She couldn't stand to see the joy vanish from his face, so she kept it to herself. She convinced herself it would work out.
But he didn't. He didn't know that I had cheated on him. And I just couldn't find it in myself to tell him because he was so excited I didn't want to hurt him, you know?
But it killed me. Everything inside of me is ripped apart because of it. That baby is my world, and I want her to be mine.
For the first month of Sophia's life, everything seemed perfect. Mr. Fisher was the kind of father people dream about. He was up at night helping with feedings. He rubbed Ms. Doyle's back, cooked her meals, cleaned the house, and held the baby like she was his whole world. But the guilt started to crack through Ms. Doyle's smile.
So that entire first month, was the guilt eating at you? What are you thinking?
I felt guilty. Like, it was inside of me saying, hey, I need to tell him, just so that he knows.
Mr. Fisher, how do you remember that night?
We just had fun all day that day, just holding Sophia, spending time with her, just quality time.
The pain in Mr. Fisher's face was visible. Still, he'd been there through the birth. He confessed that he wasn't sure he could continue raising another man's child, that he would try. But deep down, he feared what today's results might confirm. Ms. Doyle, still wearing her engagement ring, said she wanted to move forward. She begged the court for a chance to keep their family whole.
So you submitted a calendar to the court which outlined the window of conception and why you feel so concerned your daughter may not be Mr. Fisher's biological child. Sophia was born on January 15th. You took vacation April 21st to May 1st.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Doyle's voice cracked as she admitted the affair happened during that exact window. The court determined the likely conception. Dates ranged from April 19th to April 26th, right in the middle of that trip. She conceded that it was the most likely time. She didn't argue anymore. Her only defense was hope. Hope that despite the overlap, betrayal, and everything, Mr. Fisher will be Sophia's biological father.
I'm sure you've done the mental math yourself.
Yes, Your Honor.
1,000 times.
Every day.
Have you prepared yourself, Mr. Fisher? Have you said, let me prepare myself either way. Let me just think about how I will behave, how I will take my next step.
Mr. Fisher had wanted to believe. Even after the confession, he held on to the idea that Sophia was his. He looked at her eyes, her fingers, her nose, tried to find himself in her. He wasn't a scientist, he said. He just knew he loved her. And if there was even a small chance that she was his daughter, he needed to know. He needed the truth. But then he wowed the court with his response to Ms. Doyle's apology.
I'm sorry that it happened, and if she's yours, then I hope that...
Let me tell you this, you ain't gotta be guilty about it no more. I know about it, and I know you're sorry. Just don't hold it on me no more. That's my baby no matter what, and you're my wife.
The judge sat quietly for a moment, feeling emotional, her gaze shifting between the two. She had heard hundreds of cases like this, but something about this one felt heavier. Maybe it was because, deep down, everyone in that room could see just how much was riding on the next few moments. The betrayal, the doubt, the love, the confusion. It all hung in the air like static. One envelope would decide
Mr. Fisher,
everything.
You are the father.